Here's a rewritten version of the story, expanded slightly for smoother flow and natural pacing, presented as one continuous narrative with no headings, bullet points, or section breaks, just straight storytelling. My name is Marcus Palmer. I'm 45, a union electrician, and I live in Willowbrook Estates, one of those cookie-cutter Phoenix suburbs where the grass is always greener because they fine you $50 if it isn't. I inherited our modest corner lot from my late wife, Sarah, who would be spinning in her grave if she could see what this place turned into under Karen Peton's rule. My 16-year-old son Tommy has severe epilepsy and spina bifida. He's sharper than most adults I know, but his body betrays him without warning. Grand mal seizures hit 3 or 4 times a month, and when they do, every second matters. Brain damage can start after 5 minutes without help. One afternoon, the sirens were already screaming down the street, while I was on the phone begging 911 to hurry. Tommy was convulsing on the living room floor, foam at his mouth, barely breathing. The ambulance pulled right up to our driveway, red lights flashing through the windows, and that's when Karen, our HOA president, planted herself in front of it like a human barricade. Arms waving, voice shrill, she screamed at the paramedics that they couldn't park that commercial vehicle here. Rules are rules. They had to move it 200 yards away to street parking. The lead paramedic pushed past her with a calm, "Ma'am, this is a medical emergency. Step aside." Karen didn't step aside. She followed them all the way to our door, phone out, filming, timing their response, photographing equipment like this was a routine inspection and not my son fighting for his life. That night, she treated my family's crisis like a zoning violation. Big mistake. She had no idea what a desperate father would do to protect his child. Karen Peton was 48, fake blonde hair teased high, real estate agent with the soul of a parking meter. She clawed her way to HOA president by promising to elevate community standards. Translation: make life miserable for anyone who didn't fit her country club fantasy. She had a particular problem with anything that looked disabled. Tommy's wheelchair was visually depressing. His medical gear compromised the neighborhood aesthetic. She once timed our ambulance arrivals with a stopwatch and snapped photos like some twisted wildlife photographer. Her perfume, something called obsession, mixed with spite, so thick you could choke on it from 50 yards away. Behind the clipboard and crown routine, Karen was drowning. Real estate market was brutal. She was new money, trying to keep up appearances while buried in debt. I later found her confidential listing. Our corner lot flagged as a high-value development opportunity worth $340,000 for luxury townhomes. She wasn't just petty. She was calculating my son's suffering in commission checks. The breaking point came at a so-called emergency community standards meeting. Karen stood behind her imported mahogany podium and announced new rules. Ambulances were now classified as commercial vehicles. They caused traffic disruption, property damage from heavy tires, and significant aesthetic concerns. I stood up with Tommy beside me in his wheelchair and asked the obvious, what about medical emergencies? Her smile could have frozen sand. Mr. Palmer, medical emergencies do not grant exemptions from community standards. Perhaps your family should consider alternative living arrangements better suited to your special needs. The room went silent. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to hold their breath. I looked at her and said, "You're telling me to let my son die for your property values." She answered, "Rules apply equally. No exceptions." That's when I knew this wasn't about rules anymore. She declared war on my son's right to exist in her perfect little kingdom, and she'd picked a fight with the wrong father. 3 days later, she sent a certified letter demanding I submit a formal reasonable accommodation request under the Fair Housing Act. The paperwork was insane. Letters from 3 specialists proving medical necessity, architectural drawings explaining why driveway access mattered more than street parking, a 47-page application that felt like bureaucracy weaponized against disabled families. I spent $800 on urologist reports. One letter was crystal clear. Any delay in emergency response risked permanent brain damage or death. The 150-yard walk from street to front door could literally be the difference between life and permanent disability. Karen accepted my hand-delivered packet at her real estate office, vanilla air freshener mixing with my determination as she took the envelope. 3 weeks passed. Silence. Then a form letter asking for more clarification and scheduling a community impact assessment hearing 6 weeks out. She was turning federal law into a delay tactic that could cost Tommy his life. But she made her first real mistake that same week. She approved 3 other modification requests in 48 hours. The Hendersons' decorative fountain, Janet Morrison's oversized garage door, the Wilsons' backyard pergola. No hearings, no impact studies, no medical documentation. From my construction days, I knew the legal term, disparate treatment. You can't fast-track approvals for some and stall disabled families on identical requests without it being discrimination under federal law. I documented everything, dates, approvals, emails, witness statements, then filed a complaint with HUD. Fair Housing Act violations carry fines from $16,000 to $70,000 per incident, plus federal monitoring of the entire HOA. Karen's power trip had just invited investigators who didn't care about curb appeal or community standards. Within 72 hours, a HUD investigator named Maria Santos called Karen. Suddenly, my accommodation request needed urgent board review. But instead of approving it quietly, Karen announced a special public hearing to discuss the precedent-setting implications and community safety concerns. The meeting would be held in the Clubhouse, the same building that would soon become ground zero for everything that followed. After the HUD complaint, I started getting violation notices again. $200 for excessive lawn sprinkler usage creating sidewalk moisture hazard. Our sprinklers didn't even reach the sidewalk. She was fining me for physics, evaporation, and condensation in Phoenix heat. The smell of fresh ink on those bogus citations became as familiar as morning coffee, only with more spite. Our community treasurer, Rosa Martinez, a nurse who understood medical necessity, quietly pulled me aside one evening. She said something was wrong with the financials. Karen kept claiming the reserve account was broke and we couldn't afford basic maintenance. But the books should have shown $78,000 for repairs and emergencies. That was the thread I started pulling. Under Arizona law, homeowners can request detailed financial statements. Rosa formally asked. Karen stalled. Documents are being audited, results after comprehensive review. Rosa, a former bank auditor before nursing, knew deflection when she heard it. She pressed. State law requires transparency within 30 days. Karen fumbled about complex investment transactions. Our HOA managed lawns and common areas. What investments? An anonymous envelope showed up in Rosa's mailbox soon after. Photocopied records of massive transfers from the HOA Reserve Fund to Peton Property Solutions, LLC. Karen had been embezzling community money to prop up her failing real estate ventures. Every homeowner had unknowingly financed her personal crisis for 18 months. We didn't go public yet. Arizona law allows homeowners to petition for an independent audit when irregularities are suspected. Rosa filed it with the Department of Real Estate. Cost $3,500 up front, refundable if fraud was proven. I drained our emergency savings to cover it. Karen panicked. At the next board meeting, she called it a vindictive investigation to harass elected leadership and warned of thousands in legal fees to fight false allegations. Honest books don't need expensive lawyers. Her fear told us everything. The auditor, Janet Kim from Phoenix Financial Reviews, started in January. 10 days later, she called me to coffee shop. Bank statements and transfer records spread across the table. Large withdrawals disguised as emergency maintenance. No board approval. No licenses for the vendors. Multiple addresses matching Karen's real estate company. Systematic embezzlement. $67,000 siphoned to shell companies she controlled. The timeline matched perfectly. Her opposition to Tommy's accommodation began exactly when the suspicious transfer started. She wasn't protecting standards. She was protecting her crimes from scrutiny. Worse, the theft left the reserve fund with only $11,000. The 1987 clubhouse needed $85,000 to $90,000 in urgent repairs. Roof, electrical, foundation, fire code fixes. The building inspector confirmed it. 23 safety violations, immediate closure recommended, or municipal demolition in 90 days with a bill sent to the HOA. Karen's crimes had created a genuine safety hazard. An Arizona property code has a clause most people miss. Owners may execute emergency demolition of hazardous structures to protect community welfare, provided they obtain permits, follow safety protocols, and carry insurance. I could legally tear the clubhouse down myself. I spent 2 weeks learning excavator operation from Rose's cousin Danny, who ran a demolition company. He taught me controls, safety, debris management. After what she did to your family, he said, watching you personally tear down her kingdom will be beautiful. We coordinated with the city for permits. We gathered 87 household signatures supporting owner-operated demolition for public safety. We planned it for maximum impact. During Karen's monthly board meeting, with media invited, food trucks, live music, kids' activities, a community celebration of accountability. Karen fought back hard. Certified letters threatening terrorist destruction. Anonymous flyers calling me unstable and claiming Tommy's disability was being exploited for domestic terrorism. Social media blitzes from hired PR firms. False CPS reports claiming I was endangering my son. A last-minute temporary restraining order alleging I was emotionally unstable and seeking vigilante revenge. Friday's court hearing was a spectacle. Judge Patricia Santos reviewed my permits, training certificates, insurance, safety plans. She asked Karen for her legal basis. Karen shouted about precedent, revenge, my supposed instability. The judge shut down fast. Restraining order denied. My plan was legal, safe, necessary. Karen's sworn statements looked like unsupported personal attacks. Potential perjury recommended for review. Saturday morning arrived clear and bright. By 8, the neighborhood looked like a festival crossed with a documentary shoot. Food trucks, news cameras, nearly 200 people gathered. Tommy sat front and center in his wheelchair, wearing a T-shirt that read, "Justice is personal." Karen arrived at 9:30 for her board meeting, designer suit, delusional confidence intact. At 9:45, she called 911, claiming domestic terrorism in progress. Dispatch broadcast over speaker. Ma'am, our records show a permitted demolition of condemned property. This is not a police matter. At 10:15, as she tried to call the meeting to order inside the condemned building, I fired up the excavator. The diesel rumble rolled across the street like thunder. Karen rushed out screaming for me to stop, insisting she was still president, still in authority. I looked down from the cab and spoke through the machine speaker so everyone could hear. Your authority ended when you stole $67,000 from this community, tried to ban the ambulance that saved my son's life, and discriminated against disabled families while robbing every household here. Detective Sarah Williams stepped forward with cuffs. Karen was under arrest for embezzlement, fraudulent schemes, felony theft. She made one last play for sympathy. This man is destroying community property because his disabled son didn't get special treatment. He's using his child's condition to justify terrorism. Tommy rolled forward and spoke straight into the news cameras. Miss Karen, you stole money that should have kept this building safe. You tried to ban ambulances that saved my life. You call my wheelchair depressing and my medical equipment ugly. You're not the victim here. You're the criminal who's about to watch justice delivered personally. I swung the first bucket into the front wall at exactly 10:15. Concrete flew like confetti. Years of rot, mold, deferred maintenance spilled into the sunlight. Swing after swing, the building came down. Meeting room where she'd terrorized families, podium where she'd declared rules above human life. The crowd cheered with every hit. Children clapped, parents hugged, Mr. Patterson saluted, Rosa wiped tears. 90 minutes later, the clubhouse was rubble, created by one father's refusal to accept corruption as permanent. 18 months later, the rebuilt Willowbrook Community Center stood bright and open, fully accessible, with a sensory garden where kids of all abilities played on equipment I helped install. Funded by Karen's restitution and community volunteer labor. Where her symbol of power once stood, we built something honest. Karen began a 5-year prison sentence for felony theft, and related charges. Her real estate license was revoked, assets seized. Tommy, now 18, got a full scholarship to study civil rights law. At the grand opening, he spoke into the microphone. Sometimes justice isn't something you wait for. It's something you personally create. Neighbors still gather supportively when ambulances visit for Tommy's needs. Property values rose 25% after the corruption was removed. The story inspired families across Arizona to learn their rights and take direct action when institutions failed them. I didn't just fight back. I got permits, learned the machine, and personally delivered justice through channels the law itself provided. Karen thought authority made her untouchable. She learned the hard way that ordinary people, especially fathers protecting their kids, can take extraordinary action when pushed far enough. And that's how a banned ambulance in my driveway ended with a bulldozed clubhouse, 5 years in prison for the woman who thought she was above accountability, and a community that finally remembered what real standards look like.